Welcome back to Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. I'm Debbie, coach, mentor, and a lover of intentional living. And today we're talking about choosing a theme or a word for the year. I do this every year as the final episode of the calendar year. And why do I do this? Because it's a simple practice that actually rewires your brain and transforms your results. So let's dive in. Welcome to Lead Your Life, the podcast for people who are seeking harmony in business and in life. My name is Debbie Heiser, and I'm an inner mastery and business mindset coach and the chief igniter here at the Lit Up Life. I feel an urgency to help people let go of past messaging so that they can make a lot of money doing what they love without sacrificing what they value most. Welcome. We're glad you're here.
Straight from the corners of my mind.
Hello there. We're stepping into one of my favorite podcasts of the year. I do it every year as the final episode of the calendar year. And we're going to step into this powerful conversation today because it's not only my favorite podcast, but it's one of my favorite rituals every single year. I don't do New Year's resolutions. I think they're a setup for failure, at least for me. I used to do front and back single spaced. And my then husband said to me, "Why do you do that to yourself? You set yourself up for failure before you even begin." And that was a pattern that I had based on a deep-seated thought that something was wrong with me. So by choosing a word, it's helped me break that pattern. And I realized that when I really give some intentionality to choosing a word for the year, it does a whole lot of things. And there's also some neuroscience behind it. So you can have a guiding phrase. I know a lot of people from my October retreat are now talking about doing Own It, because I talk about owning who you are and everything and your power around it. You can choose a theme. We're going to talk about all those things here because when you think about choosing a word, it's not a trend. It's not a cute Pinterest board idea, but really it is a neurological anchor. And we all need that grounding, right? To remind us kind of our purpose, our passion. It's a spiritual compass because if you do any inner work, it is spiritual work. It's also a subconscious guidepost because our subconscious, remember, can't deflect messages. So our subconscious is always looking for ways to prove ourselves right. So it's a guidepost that then primes our brain to become who we want to be. And it could just be an enhancement of what you are today. So, this practice really shapes your identity, it aligns your focus, and it directs the emotional and energetic tone of the year if you choose to do it. And I want to ask, how many of you have ever felt like January starts out strong? Like, I kind of hate going to the gym in January because it's packed full, but by about week 3, it starts to kind of fade away, right? And people, their New Year's resolutions, their goals that they had, they start to fizzle. And there's a very good reason as to why that happens. And I'll talk about that in January. Um, it's neuroscience, but we'll go into more of that in January. But we go back into our old habits. And so in this episode, I want to help you understand why and how choosing a word plus having a vision or a vision board can become a system, right? And that system can help you have lasting transformation. So let's go a bit deeper here. So, why does choosing a word work? So, we're going to look at this through neuroscience. And if you think about it, your brain is a meaning maker. So we can justify, I call it logify. So I made it my own word, that we create logic to justify anything that we want to believe. And just check it out because we do all the time. So your brain is constantly trying to make meaning of something. And so it's looking for patterns, it's looking for direction, it's looking for reinforcement of who you believe your identity to be. And when you choose a word, it could be a word like expansion, it could be health, it could be surrender, Courage, visibility, overflow. You hear me talk a lot about that. It could be consistency or it could be play or playfulness. When you do that and you choose a word, you're giving your brain something really powerful. And that power comes because it's a lens to filter decisions that we make then. And what happens then too is our reticular activating system, it starts to focus and it activates this. And that reticular activating system, for those of you that haven't heard me talk about that before, is that when you create focus on something, or something new comes into your purview, you start to see it everywhere. I give the example when I lived in Kansas City, we bought a Subaru, and I had never seen Subarus around until I bought one. Then I moved to North Idaho and you see them everywhere. But it's really, it does activate that reticular activating system. So it's a lens, helps you filter your decisions. It's a lens also because you start to see things all around you, and then it becomes a narrative for your identity to follow. And part of that brain science that I've talked about before, that belief creates an identity, and there is emotion around that identity. More in that in January. But it also helps you create a felt emotional state that your subconscious then can tune to. And so, why is that important? What happens neurologically? Because I want to go into this and the neurological aspect of it, because sometimes that helps me take judgment away from myself when I can look at it as brain science, right? So, what happens when you have a word? So, for instance, I'm toying around with, and I think I've come to it, even though it's December 1st that I'm actually recording this, and you'll hear this later in the month, with this idea of the word sovereign or sovereignty. And I tend to like sovereignty a little bit better, but sovereign is about the person, it's about the identity, and it describes a person. I'm looking at my notes here, who holds the authority, and it's about owning who you are, right? And the sovereignty is the quality or state of that. So it's the power that I embody. And so I think I'm leaning more towards sovereignty. But what happens is then the more I say that word, that I am sovereign, I have sovereignty in my life, it builds new neural pathways. And the more that my brain pays attention to something, you've heard me say what you focus on gets bigger. So if I'm focusing on a word or an idea or on an identity of who I am, then the pathways around it become stronger. And that's neuroplasticity in action. So your brain, when you start to do that, literally starts to rewire itself to support your theme. The same thing happens when people sign up. I've seen it just recently with the 5 people currently signed up for the mastermind. Things are popping for them. Excuse me, because the minute they say yes, their brain starts to go into this thought of this owning their power and going into things that are new patterns, which kind of fits into the second piece here, because what happens is when we pick this word, it interrupts our old patterns. So when your word is present, though, like you can't pick a word and then forget about it, right? But when your word is present to you, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, how to incorporate that in your day-to-day life, it becomes a gentle interrupter during the day. It can become like these micro moments of awareness. That's why I have my vision board right up here next to me on my kitchen counter that I'm working at. I have little things up all over the place. I have my that was easy button because I used to make things very difficult all the time. So it's an interrupter and creates this micro moment of awareness. So what happens is, like, if your word is ease, you might start to notice where you feel tension, and it might come to you a lot faster. If your word is health, you might start to notice where you're doing things that aren't attracting health to you. Same thing with wealth or money. You might start to notice things as opportunities instead of obstacles. I was talking to someone today about something, I don't even remember what it was. And they said, "Oh, yeah, you know, excuse me, I need to, like, wouldn't it be great if this was out there?" I'm like, "Hey, that's an opportunity, right? Instead of an obstacle." Now, it could be too that if your word is like, I don't love the word boundaries, but sometimes we need those. But if you start to look at even a word as like having safe boundaries, then you start to feel an internal no sooner than what you maybe have in the past. And so when you think about that, right, it builds these neural pathways that are new. It interrupts the old behaviors or patterns, and then it shapes your identity. So your brain doesn't change because you try harder. It doesn't, it's all be disciplined. Well, yeah, that takes you so far, but the brain doesn't change because I just try harder or because I want to have more discipline, because then what happens is I beat myself up, I lower my frequency. It changes because we change our identity. Our identity shifts. So therefore, the brain starts to change. So when your word becomes a part of you and a part of your identity, your behaviors naturally begin to match it. The same thing goes with goals that I talked about last time around if you have a big, juicy goal, it starts to change things in your life today, even if the goal is later on. So we've got this whole idea of neuroplasticity, and I've been talking a lot about emotion. And so I want to kind of combine the emotion with the spiritual component as well. And if you think about it, the word of the year isn't just mental, it's also tied up in the emotion and it's energetics. It's a way of choosing your vibration because universal law teaches us the law of vibration is that your emotional state or your emotional tone, which is wrapped up in your identity, sets your frequency. And so we're emitting this vibration, and so we're attracting that vibration. The other law that I love to talk about this is also with the law of assumption. Because if I think of myself as sovereign and having sovereignty, then I'm going into it with the law of assumption, acting as if it's real. Like I'm owning that. And then the third one is what I love is about the law of perpetual transmutation, because what we think, what we feel then comes into form, right? So it goes from this metaphysical thought process into form, but we got to get the emotion piece in there. So a word can really help us focus. It's simplified, it's a potent identity expression. And it really becomes a mantra. It becomes, I mentioned this earlier, a grounding for us, right? And it's a calling forward. It's that pull forward. And this is also why pairing your word with a vision board creates a really powerful attractor field. So we're going to take a quick break and come back and talk about why vision boards are important. I want to give a quick shout out to my favorite online community for women entrepreneurs. It's called Build Her. If you've craved a space to connect with other women who truly get the journey, this is your space. We go live monthly for in-depth training on all things business, and it's where you'll get the latest news from the Lit Up Life first. Plus a chance to swap stories, tips, and triumphs with an amazing community of women. It's welcoming, it's fun, and it's where we cheer each other on through every up and down of entrepreneurship. Join us and let's build each other up. Check it out at thelituplife.com/buildher. We mentioned the fact that we can have these mantras, that the laws fit into this, that it changes the neural pathways of our brain by choosing a word, and we start to own that word and the feeling around the word. I really want you to feel that. If your word is courageous, feel what it feels like to be the courageous lion, right? Wicked is all the rage right now. That what does it feel like to have heart if you want to connect more? Really embody that. So when you embody that, then pairing that with a vision board, and it really then can create this attractor. It's interesting. I was talking to a client of mine, and she was talking about how she had drawn out, they did some vision boards where they just drew out pictures, and it was a little stick picture person, and it was her speaking on the stage with a pink dress on. And interestingly enough, she found this pink dress. She ended up speaking on this big stage that really kind of set off some things for her. And when she went back and looked at that vision board, she realized she had placed it on the vision board and it happened, right? Because your subconscious takes a hold of that. So what happens is when we think about the vision board and how it creates a powerful attractor field, the word sets the identity, and then this vision board supplies the imagery around it. So then we can take the emotion and connect the identity and the imagery and what that feels like. So that's really how manifestation becomes embodied and not just conceptual or up in our brain. So the question really becomes then, how do you choose your word or theme? So I'm going to give you a few questions and you can stop the recording on the podcast for a minute or two, or you can just kind of think about these. I don't care, whichever way you want to do it. But here's some questions to reflect on. What is the version of you that you're stepping into? And I want you to use it in first person. So say to yourself, what is the version of me I'm stepping into? What do I embody? How do I speak? What do I tolerate? What do I refuse? What do I prioritize in my life? And then what like felt sense do I want to live into this year? Do I want to have peace? Do I want to have fire and passion? Do I want to have overflow? Do I want to have the sovereignty? Right? Do I want to be in alignment? Do I want to have vitality? Like all of these things. Right now, don't get overwhelmed by it. But then ask yourself too, what outcomes do you want? And who must you be to hold it? Because, see, when you talk about juicy goals and then you talk about this word, you notice I'm not talking about losing something or, a task. There are tasks that can come into this, which then become inspired action, but you got to get the inspiration here, right? Like that's what the goals and the words are all about. So, what outcome do you want? And ask it in first person, what outcome do I want and who must I become to hold it? So that last question is really important. Who must I become to hold it? And don't fake it till you make it, but be it till you become it. That's how we train the brain. And then just ask yourself, what's a theme that keeps whispering to you? I have to tell you, I had never seen the word sovereign. I had not heard it very often. And in the last 2 months, I have heard it, seen it, like felt it more than I have in my whole lifetime. So I know that that's the thing. And I think I'm going to interchange the two, right? That I am sovereign and I'm going to share my sovereignty. So anyway, there's always a theme that is comes back again and again. So let the word choose you. Now, here's the thing. Some people don't like to have a word for the whole year, right? Do it the way it feels best for you. You can have one that's quarterly, you can have a monthly one, you can have a seasonal word. Heck, you could have one every week if you wanted to. Like weekly to me is a little too much, but like you could have a quarterly theme. Now, what I would do is pick one word, which I'm going to, as sovereign or sovereignty, and then each month, is there a characteristic that makes me sovereign? And there may or may not be, right? And I don't know the answer for myself even yet. But you could then choose a word every month that helps lead into that bigger theme. You could then also have a quarterly theme. Now, these are good for like 90-day sprints, for business goals, health resets, or relationships expansions. And you could have four different words, right? Like foundation or expansion, visibility, celebration, whatever it is for you that speaks to you. Again, you could do a monthly theme. I know some people that do this and it works out really well. That's up to you to pick that out. Again, I mentioned a weekly word sometimes I think is a little too much. Um, and you could break it down and have a word for your physical health or whatever. But again, I'm going to go back to simple because really that was kind of my word last year. And so when you think about simplifying, make it as easy as possible because our brain then gets bogged down. So, how do we pair this word then with our vision board? Well, our vision board, as I mentioned before, becomes the visual anchor to your word. And here's how you combine the two. Choose your word first. Now, in this case, I did a vision board the other night with a group of people, and that's kind of also where my words started to come up a little bit too. I'm looking at it over here for those of you on YouTube. So you can do the vision board first and let the word come to you. But I found that kind of the best way to do it is to choose your word first and let that feeling lead you. And then find images that activate the emotion behind that word. And because your subconscious really needs that imagery, right? I've got on here, well, here, I'll just show it to you. I've got travel on here. I've got stuff about wellness. I've got fun and play over here. I've got like bright, open, optimistic spaces. And you can see right here was left open for my word. I've got this whole idea of like rancher kind of thing and kind of a dating life this year. But anyway, what happens is your subconscious needs that imagery. And so include some identity-based photos, not what you do or who you become, but more about like who is it that I want to become? What is it that I want? You noticed on there I had like something about a wellness reset, like just really being mindful about where my energy is going and who's taking my energy and who's giving me energy. Put your word somewhere on that vision board. And then place your board where you'll see it every day. You can take pictures of it. I know some people like to do them on Canva and digitally. That I don't like doing them that way. I like to feel it and have it. There's something about the touch and that sensation of touch, but make sure to revisit it. I used to put them in my planner. Um, and I just decided I needed something a little bit more visual because my planner, I can cover it up pretty quickly. But revisit it and update it every month or when you do your planning because that momentum grows with your reflection. So, here's some practical tips to stay connected to your word. Put your word everywhere. I mentioned that. Put it on your phone screen. Put it in your planner. Put it on sticky notes. I have stuff on my bathroom mirror. Put it on your desktop background because repetition, this constant repetition, rewires your brain. You can also create, I mentioned those micro moment rituals, right? Like for 5 or 10 seconds, say the word, breathe it in, let your posture shift a little bit. Imagine the identity connected to it because those micro moments change your nervous system and it puts you back into that more relaxed, safe space, right? Use the word then to guide decisions, right? Does this action or inspired action move me closer to or further away from being sovereign? Does it help me share sovereignty with people? If it doesn't, then why am I doing it? You know, one of the things that kind of came about with my marketing piece is that when people experience something with me, there's a built-in trust component that happens. They have the experience where if someone doesn't experience me, it's not it's a longer jump, right, to actually becoming a client. And so as this idea of sovereign and sovereignty continue to come forward, one of the things that I'm looking at is anything that I'm doing needs to have it where people experience me, hence even the podcast, right? So your theme kind of revolves around it can create business revolution, it can create personal things, whatever it is for you. Then I want you to create an end of the month check-in, right? Like notice. We always think we're going to remember everything. I was just talking to somebody about my trip to Scotland, and I said, you know what? We did this hike. I don't even remember the name of the hike. I need to go back and look it up, and I need to write this stuff down because I'm going to forget. The same thing holds true here. So, how did your words shape you during the month? What evidence of change have you seen in any kind of action that you've done? Is there anything that needs to adjust for the following month? And then anchor it physically. I know a couple of years ago we made the words like necklaces or bracelets that you could wear, but have a bracelet or a ring, a necklace, or like a color, something around you that symbolizes that word. Because again, your body learns through association and your body is attached to those emotions, right? And then share it with people, share it with community, because that creates accountability, belonging and reflection. And if somebody has a judgment about your word, just quietly remove yourself. You don't need to deal with that, right? But like share with people that understand and get the self-development that you do. Because again, the accountability, that reflection, that belonging, it kind of well, leads me to a perfect place to share with you that your word or theme for this year isn't a resolution. It's really a recalibration of who you're becoming. And when you choose a word intentionally, pair it with a vision or vision board, and you align your daily actions with it, you're not just planning a year. You're rewiring your brain, you're shifting your identity, and you're activating new neural pathways of possibility in your brain. You're living your life on purpose. I see so many people that feel like they don't have a purpose. So here's your call to action: choose your word, or your quarterly theme, create a vision board, and then join us inside the Build Her Facebook community, where you'll have support, reflection, accountability, and celebration as you anchor this identity in throughout the year. You don't have to do this alone. You get to be supported. You get to be seen. You get to be cheered on. And this year, let it be the year you become you. With that, folks, it's a wrap. I hope everybody has a fantastic New Year's Eve, and we'll see you in 2026. That's a wrap for this conversation. I'm so glad you've joined us. Remember to subscribe to the podcast so you can catch all of our future episodes, and visit us at thelituplife.com for details on how you can become part of the Lit Up Life community. A quick shout out to my friend Jackie Wilson and her friends, the creators of our amazing theme music. Thanks so much for allowing us to share this perfect song with our listeners. Looking forward to having you listen in to our next episode.